Alexander Andreevich Rubel is an Estonian serial killer. In a state of intoxication with gasoline fumes, he took the lives of 6 people in Tallinn and its environs. In 2006, it was 8 years since no one remembered about him. The name of Alexander Rubel has disappeared from the pages of newspapers, new pseudo-heroes have appeared, something like 1,000 new murders have occurred. Remember, the case of the man called the most brutal serial executioner, forced the calendar. Time has flown by, and the deadline is ending. Exactly 8 years later, on June 8, 2006, he was among us again. After only 8 years in prison, nothing has changed in Rubel's life and he returned to his father's house. The one where the police took him from. The one where most of the crimes incriminated to him took place. Who does not know, I will explain, the first, and 3 more particularly serious crimes, for which Alexander Rubel served the 8 years assigned to him, were committed in the house number 100B, on Tallinn's Copley Street. Once this house was called very, very problematic. Maybe the reason was not 2 calm tenants, or maybe it was this tenant who stuck the stigma, recognized as one of the most. Nothing bad can be said about the house today. And he looks decent to the envy of many of his twins, and he got a sign, apartment partnership, and he gets into police reports so rarely that he can't remember whether there was something or not. But let's go back 8 years. In September 1997, when neighbors in the corridor found a local disabled person in a blood-soaked bed.
Hey, I'm not going to beat around the bush. You have to subscribe to the channel and like it so you don't miss new videos.
The signal about the incident came to the police the next day, after a certain fanatic visited the room of a man chained to a bed. His neighbors found him, who, out of habit, went to an infirm person. Then they will tell the detectives that the victim could not get food on his own. His legs didn't walk at all, so he was fed by anyone who could. The man was last seen alive the night before. And the next day they found a mutilated body. The doctors who examined the body told the police that the disabled man was deprived of his life with an axe. They were beaten mainly on the head, which is why there are open injuries. There are no signs of resistance, and he did not resist. He had neither the strength nor the health for this. The police had to go to the house on Copley, 100B for the second time 2 months later, in November of the same 1997. The plumbers who came to the house came across the body of a man with a head injury at the doors leading to the basement. In this episode, it is striking that the body lay unnoticed for several days. Despite the fact that the deceased lived in the same house, and his executioners, as it turns out later, his own neighbors, quietly wandered nearby. According to doctors, there were many lifetime injuries on the body of the deceased. 2 slashed knife wounds, traces of strangulation. Then he was thrown out of the window. 3 days after the discovery of the body, detectives detained Andreevich Rubel, the tenant of the house, Alexander's father. Andrei was under investigation for almost 6 months, apparently without saying a word about his son who helped him, who during this period managed to send for more to the next world. The exact date of the 3rd massacre has remained a mystery. The verdict handed down by the Tallinn City Court says that everything happened approximately from January 22 to January 24, 1998. The body of a man with multiple stab wounds was found in a park on Strom Beach. It was possible to identify the deceased by fingerprints. The police database has issued data on a previously convicted man. Surely the police have worked out a version about old grievances, debts, and contacts. But they managed to find out the cause of the old man's death only a few months later, and they did not touch the man's criminal past in any way. The 4th terrible body was found in February of the same year near the house number 10 on Kavuri Street. Multiple wounds all over the body, perhaps, and left the unfortunate at least some chance of survival. But the maniac completed his work with blows of an axe, literally deprived him of his head. The 5th crime was also committed again in February at 100B Copley Street. This time, a woman died who choked on her own blood after she lost consciousness from beatings and attempts by the monster to block the oxygen to her victim. A month later, a man's body was found at the same address. The death occurred from many blows, which caused serious damage to the lungs. How much longer could the adventures of a maniac who got into the taste go on? It's hard to say. But the solution to the story was brought to the police by the residents of the long-suffering house themselves. The parents of two guys, in front of whom Rubel took the girl's life, reported the incident to the police. Officially, Alexander Rubel has been in custody since June 8, 1998. The last victim of the serial killer died 4 days earlier. According to the laws of that time, it was possible to be held in custody without court permission and indictment for up to 10 days. The 17-year-old, who found himself in the hands of the investigation, immediately began to testify. In general, if you carefully read the verdict, Rubel told the police about 7 lives. It was possible to prove only 6, and 1 fell off at the stage of the court of second instance. Either it was already difficult to attribute them to the criminal, although he himself told about him, or no one bothered. But in this situation, no matter how cynical it may sound, the score was no longer particularly important. 765. Rubel gave monstrous testimony in terms of content. He shared his impressions and talked about his motives. However, the latter makes the perfect even more terrible. Remember the first murder? An immobile and defenseless invalid. Rubel said that he heard from friends that a sick person lives in such a room. When he is in, the idea came to his head to learn from his own experience what human life is, and it was on this neighbor that he decided to try. Then he will tell how he took a small hatchet with him, came to the man and began to strike. He stopped, pulled a pillowcase over the poor guy, saying that the blood wouldn't splash like that, and beat him again. Each time the sensations became more acute. He told the investigator that for a few more minutes he sat next to his victims and watched the blood run out of the wound. At the same time, he did not forget to add that he did not want to torment the victims and therefore tried to do everything quickly. By the way, he went hunting every time, as experts specify, in a state of toxic intoxication. Simply put, he sniffed gasoline, went astral and went to take lives. I used to take a break at the next crime scene to take another sniff. Why was he caught for so long? The father, with whom he sent a neighbor to the next world, was in custody for 6 months. Almost all the crimes were committed in one house. In almost every episode, detectives will then find a friend or neighbor, to whom Rubel told about another ruined life. But he remained at large. Prosecutor Hinge-Brand demanded to find Alexander guilty of committing 6 deprivations of life and impose a sentence of 8 years in prison for him, since Rubel was a minor during a series of crimes. At the trial, Rubel threatened to send the prosecutor to the next world and said that he wanted to create his own cemetery. In June 2006, the personality of Alexander Rubel again became interesting to the public. The question arose again, why only 8 years? I explain. He was tried according to the laws of that time, when exactly this could be the maximum term for a minor. Now the bar has been raised to 10 years, but life imprisonment is also allowed in special cases, although it has never been given yet. The second question is he normal? By actions, certainly not. But numerous psychiatric examinations have come together in a single answer. He is very cruel, denies the moral foundations of society, but he is completely sane. He has no mental illnesses, gives and has given an account of his actions, colorfully and in detail describes the details of crimes, and therefore can be criminally punished. He carried it. He did not even begin to use the legal right to ask for parole after 2/3 of the term. He served all 8 years. No one has the right to keep him in custody anymore. He was released on June 8, although he will remain under the supervision of the relevant authorities. What has he become? Was he able to correct himself and overcome the desire to kill? The prosecutor who conducted Rubel's case in court, as well as other specialists who had personal experience with him, say they do not believe in correction, but at the same time they let him go. The public was wondering, and now what? To wait and be afraid of meeting with the released murderer. Whatever it was, there is no legal reason not to release a person who has served the appointed term. On June 8, 2006, Rubel was released from the Tartu prison. In 2007, he changed his name and surname and left for the territory of Ukraine, after which his trace is lost.